Welcome to the Heart Centered Life podcast, a podcast that helps you cultivate a life where intellect, emotion, and intuition align. Each week, we bring you tools, resources, or guests to help you find that space where your true happiness resides and encourage you to meet the world's deep hunger from that place. Because we truly believe that when your deep happiness meets the world's deep hunger, miracles happen. I'm your host, Elena Boyd. Welcome to the last episode for July, where our theme for the month is creativity, a subject close to my heart. In this episode, I'm going to try to answer 3 questions. First is, what is creativity? Second, why is creativity important to successful entrepreneurship? And number 3, how do we be creative? Creativity is so much more than just producing art, music, or books. Things that we associate artistic talent with. Creativity is not the exclusive purview of artists and musicians such as Mozart, Beethoven, movie makers like Steven Spielberg, or the people around us that we know to be artistic. I really think that creativity is innate, that we are all born creative, and that any one of us can be creative. I also believe that we have to nurture creativity and let it flourish. If not, our analytical and logical mind can become dominant. When that happens, we become less creative. Creative expression also promotes individual well-being, as research in psychology and cognitive neuroscience have shown. I've got a document on my website about how to use creativity to reach a more consistent state of well-being. And I don't want to spend my reflection here about creativity, talking about creativity and well-being. Although creativity is an effective method to achieve a state of wellness and well-being. So the link to download that document is in the show notes below. But in this episode, I wanted to share some things that came up for me this month as I reflected on what creativity meant. Since we are on summer break this month, I spent a lot of time working on my business and thinking about what I would like to accomplish through the business. And I fleshed out a 5-stage program that would help creative and social entrepreneurs convert ideas into products and services that sell. And as I worked on this program and talked to people who would be my ideal client, I realized that creativity was essential to successful entrepreneurship. And I wanted to flesh that insight out in this podcast with the 3 questions that I mentioned earlier to help you be more creative as an entrepreneur, but also as a professional. So those 3 questions is, number 1, what is creativity? Number 2, why is being creative so important? Aside from the fact that it promotes and sustains well-being, why is it so important to our professional and entrepreneurial life? And number 3, some ideas on how to get those creative juices flowing. So the 3rd question is how to be creative. So I'm going to start with the first question. What is creativity? And I'll talk about what creativity is and what it isn't. So I'll start with Charles Eames. He's an American designer. He's an architect, filmmaker. And he and his spouse, Ray Eames, had created groundbreaking contributions in architecture, furniture design, industrial design, manufacturing, and photography. But he had to say this that I thought was really interesting in starting off this conversation. So he said this, and I quote, "Recent years have shown a growing preoccupation with the circumstances surrounding the creative act and a search for the ingredients that promote creativity. This preoccupation in itself suggests that we are in a special kind of trouble. And indeed we are." And I quote, and that's his quotation. And it seems to be that the trouble that we are in today is that we've forgotten how to be creative. I'm in academia, and academics write many books about creativity, and we study creativity, and businesses try to train their employees to be creative and create an external environment, with the right light and the right colors, and the right ambience to allow for creative thought. And that's exactly the trouble that Charles Innes felt with the quote, "growing preoccupation with the circumstances surrounding the creative act and the search for the ingredients that promote creativity." And I unquote. So that quote, we seem to have forgotten that it's not difficult to be creative. We are born creative. Just look at a child and how the child tries to make connections and connect ideas and different thoughts to come up with a whole solution. And we think that creativity is something that kind of strikes us out of nowhere, that we suddenly come up with a creative thought, or that we are suddenly hit by the sudden stroke of genius, almost by magic. And that's not exactly true as well. I love Malcolm Gladwell as an author, as a writer, and I love his books. And I think he's great. He's really awesome. But he has this to say about creativity that I'm not sure is very helpful to us as we try to engage a more creative mind. So Malcolm Gladwell, in his reflection on Albert O. Hisham's legacy, he wrote a review of Worldly Philosopher, The Odyssey of Albert O. Hirschman. And he says this, that the creative process isn't so deliberate, right? And this is what he says, I quote, "Creativity always comes as a surprise to us. Therefore, we can never count on it, and we dare not believe in it until it has happened. In other words, we would not consciously engage upon tasks whose success clearly requires that creativity be forthcoming. Hence, the only way in which we can bring our creative resources fully into play is by misjudging the nature of the task, by presenting it to ourselves as something more routine, simple, undemanding of genuine creativity, then it will turn out to be." And that's an interesting perspective, but that idea that creativity comes to us as a surprise, and that we have to kind of simplify the nature of our task to make it routine, and undemanding of creativity, so that this creative brilliance will suddenly strike us, is a very romantic version of creativity. And I'm a copyright scholar and in copyright law, we always say, well, that's the romantic idea of what creativity is. And that's not true, in that some of the most creative people that we see around us have drawn from ideas from the past. They have found inspiration in things that are around them, and that idea that creativity comes suddenly, what creativity really entails, at least not to me. And in my reflections this month, and thinking about creativity from all different aspects, creativity really comes from our imagination and our natural ability to see different patterns in our surroundings. And we tend to draw ideas from our past experiences and what we've gone through. So I like this vision or version of creativity that was provided by Steve Jobs, and he famously said this. I quote: "Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they really didn't do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new things. And the reason they were able to do that was that they had more experiences, or they had thought more about the experiences than other people. Unfortunately, that's too rare a commodity. A lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences. So they don't have enough dots to connect, and they end up with very linear solutions without a broad perspective on the problem. The broader one's understanding of the human experience, the better design we will have. And that, I think, is a more accurate conceptualization of creativity. Because what creativity really is that ability to connect different experiences and to come up with a solution to a problem or a challenge through that connection of all those different disparate ideas. And it's so true that we need to have diverse experiences to come up with a good solution. Or if we do not have diverse experiences, we have to surround ourselves with a team or a community that is diverse, with different people coming to the table with different viewpoints, right? And when we come together, then the solution that we propose will be a lot more creative than someone who has an experience that isn't very diverse. And as Steve Jobs say, if we want a non-linear solution, we have to have enough experiences and specifically diverse experiences to connect the dots that someone who doesn't have that experience wouldn't be able to do. So that's what creativity is, right? The ability to connect different ideas, different disparate ideas, to come up with one solution. Now, if that's what creativity means, then this is what creativity isn't. Number one, creativity doesn't mean originality. So I teach copyright law. I'm a copyright scholar. And the law actually protects original expressions, meaning expressions that originate from a particular author or a creator. But creativity itself can involve ideas. They don't even have to be an actual expression by the author. It can just be a thought. In fact, a lot of creative thinking it's just a matter of connecting ideas and experiences that we've had. And it doesn't have to be an expression, and it doesn't have to be original. You know, the idea that it hits you suddenly, the creativity hits you suddenly, or that a creative idea suddenly comes to you. That's not entirely accurate for the most part, for the majority of the population. So creativity doesn't have to be original, or creativity doesn't necessarily equate originality. And number two, creativity is not inventiveness. So I also teach patent law, and patent law, of course, protects inventions that have the characteristics of being new and non-obvious to people who, have the same technical knowledge with inventors in the same field. The law calls them the person skilled in the art. But generally that means that the invention has to be new and not obvious to people in the field. And creative thinking doesn't require that kind of standard, right? Or it doesn't require the individual to achieve that kind of standard, in that the thought has to be something completely new that people did not know about or anticipate before, and that people in the field would look at the idea and think, oh my goodness, that's such an idea that wasn't obvious to all of us. That it's so, and the phrase that the law uses is it's non-obvious. And creative thinking doesn't require, or doesn't need have to reach that kind of standard. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be non-obvious. It doesn't have to be unanticipated by people, right? So creativity can be something that it's so obvious, but with your experience, you've managed to pull all your experiences and your thoughts and ideas together, so that it forms a cohesive whole, right? So creativity isn't originality, and creativity isn't inventiveness. Which leads me to the next question. Why is creativity important to successful entrepreneurship? So the website all below defines entrepreneurship as the act of creating a business while building and scaling it to generate a profit. However, as a basic entrepreneurship definition, it is a little bit limiting, because if we think about modern entrepreneurship, if we just look around the entrepreneurs that we know are around us, the definition would involve transforming the world by solving big problems, like initiating social change, creating an innovative product, or presenting a new life-changing solution. Entrepreneurship means more than just being a business or creating jobs. And if you look around the entrepreneurs that we see around us, people like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, the products and services that their business had created have effectively changed the world. It's been transformative. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs making sure that computers become a part of every household, not something that belongs to an office or a business. They've changed the world differently because they've imagined things differently as well. So entrepreneurs see possibilities and solutions that the average person doesn't. So where an average person may see, problems and challenges and even annoyances, the entrepreneur sees possibilities and solutions. And that very definition of entrepreneurship includes being creative, because an entrepreneur can only solve problems and create new solutions and transform the world when he or she is able to see new possibilities and opportunities to make a difference when other people see obstacles and problems. So that very ability requires the entrepreneur to look at things differently, think creatively, connect dots and ideas that have eluded others, design products and services in a way that allows others to live and think differently, and transform society from one state into another. That very act requires creative thinking, or those activities require a significant amount of creative thinking. So creativity is essential to being a successful entrepreneur, because on every step of the entrepreneurial journey, from the conception of the idea to the design of the product or service to marketing to launching and selling the product, Every single step can be improved by being more creative and approaching and looking at those processes in a more creative, non-linear fashion. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're in one of the professions, creativity can improve so many of your processes significantly. Management, staff relationships, processes to produce products or services. It would improve, creative thinking would improve customer relations. And of course, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the products and services that a business or profession produces can be improved through creative thinking. So creative thinking isn't only for the artist, the novelist, or the movie producer. Creativity is also so important to the professionals, lawyers, doctors, activists, mathematicians, even politicians developing policies for their constituencies. We can all benefit from creative thinking. We will always need new ways of seeing old problems. So the question is, how do we be creative? And the key to being creative is to have more experiences that you can draw from to connect dots, empathize with people and the problems they face, and see solutions to some of these problems. So here are 10 ways to be creative and engage the creative part of your brain. So number 1, get an inspiration board. And with Pinterest, that's easy, right? Start a Pinterest account if you don't already have one, and build an inspiration board. What looks good to you? What does a good life look like to you? Gather pictures and revisit that board over and over and over again to be inspired with different ideas. And in some ways, the pictures can also create a more diverse experience. So the first thing is create an inspiration board. Number 2, go out more and look around you for inspiration. Number 3, draw or sketch to engage your creative thinking. Number 4, play a musical instrument. Number 5, socialize. But during the pandemic, socialization might not happen that easily. So we might have to figure out ways that we could perhaps socialize online. And really, there is nothing that's going to stop us from gathering with friends for virtual beer or dinner, right? So we still can socialize, even though we may not be able to go out, or may not be a great idea to go out to a restaurant, but we can still socialize with people through online connections, right? So number 5, socialize. Number 6, be curious about the world around you. Ask why things are the way they are, how you can make it different, and keep asking those questions, and always remember to be empathetic when asking those questions. Always try to connect with the people who have those problems that you're trying to solve. Be empathetic with the way they experience that problem, and the solution that you create or come up with is going to be more practical and transformative than if you did not have that empathy. Number 7, be adventurous. And if you want to, and we've talked about adventure in all the episodes from last month's podcast, where the theme for that month was adventure. So this was in June. So check out those episodes from last month about going beyond your comfort zone, suspending judgment and experiencing new experiences. And embracing new experiences. So number 7 is be adventurous. Number 8, collaborate with others. As we talked earlier just now, and when if you go back to Steve Jobs' definition of what creativity means, By collaborating with others, we create diverse viewpoints that collectively improves creativity in the group. So, for example, a philosopher, a mathematician, a lawyer, and a doctor will have very different perspectives on how to solve the same problem. And if you can bring people with diverse viewpoints together and collaborate to solve a particular problem, the solution is always going to be a lot more creative than if either one of these people tried to tackle the problem alone. Number 9, meditate. Nothing improves creativity more than a mind that's quiet and that's in the here and now and present. So in other words, meditate, because nothing improves creativity more than a quiet mind in the here and now. And number 10, be grateful, because gratitude is the antidote to anxiety and fear. And when we are grateful, it allows for feelings of grace, well-being, and optimism to flow outward. And research has shown the link between gratitude and other forms of positive emotions like joy and creative problem solving. So there we have it. 10 ways to be creative and engage the creative part of your brain. Number 1, create an inspiration board. Number 2, go out more. And number 3, sketch and draw. Number 4, play a musical instrument. Number 5, socialize. Number 6, be curious about the world around you. Number 7, be adventurous. Number 8, collaborate with others. Number 9, meditate. And number 10, be grateful. So that's how we can be more creative. Those are just some ideas. I'm sure you can come up with a lot more. But as a starting point, try to pick one of those, or just engage the creative part of your mind and get those creative juices flowing. So my call to action with this episode is to be creative exactly where you are. So you don't have to, leave the life that you've built for yourself and your family and go off to be a musician or an artist to be creative. Be creative where you are. People with creative confidence have a greater impact on the world around them. Number 2, consider how you can be creative and do it. So I gave you 10 different ways in which you can start being, or activities in which you can start to be creative. Start with those and then build up and build out from those 10 ideas. And number 3, leave us a comment and review on iTunes if you liked this episode and found it helpful. So that's all for this episode and this month. And that was my reflection on creativity. I welcome ideas or thoughts and your own reflections that I'm happy to share in the next episode as we wrap up next month's theme. So that will be August, and the theme that we will have for that month is going to be passion. So until the next episode, thank you for being here, and I will see you soon. Thank you for joining us this week on the Heart-Centered Life podcast. Make sure to visit our website, www.elinaboyd.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. If you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. Be sure to check out some of our programs on how to cultivate, create, communicate, and inspire others from a heart-centered space. Tune in next week for our next episode, where we will help you find a place of deep happiness so that you can meet the world's deep hunger and watch miracles unfold.